26th meeting of the Town of Southampton Conservation Board. The board's meeting continue to be hybrid, which means they are both in person at Town Hall and via video conference through Zoom webinar. If you go to the town website and click to the town clerk's agendas and meetings portal, you can watch the live stream video of the meeting, and there is a link to submit written comments for the public record. You can also join the Zoom webinar through the town clerk's portal. If you are attending via Zoom and wish to speak during the meeting, then please alert our moderator by clicking the raise hand icon or type in the chat box. Thank you. I'd like to rise for the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You were here.
It was
And,
the 12th.
well, the meeting minutes in here somewhere. Let's see. Do you have a list of the attendance for January 8th? We
They'll
don't.
be on the minutes,
Yeah, they're not in.
yeah.
So,
Well, we
Minutes
should
are
have
not-
the minutes when we,
yeah.
when they should be in front of us.
Okay, so we'll skip that.
You want to maybe check this, see if you have sufficient members to vote on either.
We do not have sufficient members for the February
For the
12th
12th,
meeting.
because I already know I wasn't here and that was straight. We just don't know about the 8th.
I think we have a number of holdovers, don't we, for approving minutes?
We approved something last time. I think we did two of them last time. But we weren't able to do January 8th. And Aaron, do you want a few minutes or are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Public hearings, A 021076 Nicholas Christopher and Penelope Christopher, and the applicant requests adjournment to April 23rd, 2025. Is there anyone in the public who would speak on this application? Is there a motion?
Motion to adjourn to April 23rd, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You have
A
whatever in mind?
0, yes.
You have your own copies?
A 019131 Lynn Crew Revocable Trust.
Good evening for the applicant, Aram Tertunian, First Coastal, West Hampton Beach, New York. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming.
You're in possession of two reports that we prepared. One was submitted last week, one was submitted several months ago. What I wanted to do today was basically walk you through the second report and then respond to any questions that you might have. I've got some large scale ones I just wanted to pin up on the wall because of the kind of the main points I want to make. So give me one moment and I'll do that.
Sometimes she has them on
It used to be right there.
There's one right there.
There's an extra one in front of you. I picked up off the floor before. There you go. Yeah. He's good.
You got this one document?
Well,
No, I have
Put 'em all
five
in
for
one
you.
section.
I'm reusing some of the ones up here now, we're recycling. Unfortunately, I have a bunch
much tougher than others.
I may have to run downstairs.
Oh, I got it.
Oh,
Just
you got
use them
it.
as
We're
that.
peeling them off the wall here.
Oh, okay.
Thanks. What do we got?
Aaron, maybe you could go this way?
I got him. I gave him.
That's a good point, isn't it?
Stand farther away from us.
Here's one.
I'm good, I got them all.
Here's a couple more. I got, yeah, I got, one more. Where do we go?
Wow, this wall gets harder every time.
Yeah, that's spots. You know, just bend.
Can you guys see that okay?
Yeah.
I can see it great.
We don't keep the same copies in our pamphlet.
He wants to show them for the audience. For the audience.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
I guess I want just I want to direct your attention to this photo first. It really describes the site pretty well. Here's the residence, just quite modest for how large a parcel this is. In the foreground, you can see the gabion structure, which has suffered damage right there, more or less in the center. And you can see that here in the unprotected area, there's been a significant amount of erosion. And you can see here, this is the staggered boulder field for the property to the south. And we'll get into describing that in a little bit. Also want to set, where this fits in the overall shoreline. There's a lot of detail, I think, in the first report, how many feet of shoreline there are. But as you can see, this is, well over a mile. Our parcel sits right here. What's in red are vertical bulkheads here and down here. This is the staggered boulder field you see in that photo. And the green areas where there aren't any structures at all right now. So in many ways, what we're doing here is infilling between what is more or less a continuous line of structures on this beach. As you know, Little Peconic Bay is not so little. If you're a boater and the wind's out of the southwest, you get about a 3 to 4 foot swell running through the bay. And because of where this is situated, it drives right into the shoreline and moves the sand right up to Jessup Neck. So although it's Little Peconic Bay, it really is quite a substantial body of water where we have pretty substantial waves. In the earlier report, we went through and gave a history of the erosion in the area, which is in excess of 1 foot per year, and a lot more information about littoral transport, the type of materials, the flood levels. Just as a point of reference, the surge elevation from Superstorm Sandy was 6.5 feet above the zero datum, which just about equals a 1 in 50 year storm. So there's some more specific detail in the most recent report I gave you. You can see from the topo survey, this area is obviously very steep. Even in here where there's still vegetation, this is a pretty steep bluff face. If you go to page 6 of your report, what we tried to do was to incorporate here what are the physical forces hitting the shoreline. And this becomes critical when we do our evaluation of alternatives. Because obviously the purpose here is to control erosion with the minimum adverse impacts. But whatever solution we do choose needs to actually be able to control erosion on the site. And control, I think, is an important word here. It's not eliminate. And yes, in these areas, they have essentially eliminated erosion because they have vertical seawalls and there's no retreat in sight. But here, what we're trying to do is to protect the toe of the bluff from direct wave attack, because bluffs fail when waves strike the toe, remove the material at the toe, the face becomes over-steepened, gravity does the rest, and clearly that's what's happening right here in this section. What we're trying to do here is to minimize that wave impact. We're not going to be able to eliminate it because there are other agencies that have jurisdiction here. One of them is the state. And the state has developed a guidance that says you can stabilize the toe of a bluff like this, but you can only do it with 4.5 tons of rock per foot. So that limits your design. So you can't build a 12-foot high structure anymore. Well, if we could build a 12-foot high structure, we could probably stop the erosion here, but we're not going to be able to do that. It's going to be a smaller structure. And the state's perspective, as has been explained to me, is you're going to control the erosion, you're not going to stop it. And that's really the thrust of what we're doing here. And just to review, we've got the shoreline orientation. It's a 3-mile fetch. When the wind is blowing 50 miles an hour, it generates a pretty substantial wave. That is really the critical factor here is this wave energy. And the other factor is sea level rise. So, sea level rise is a geologic fact. The state of New York has made a prediction that sea level is going to rise 16 inches on Long Island between now and 2050. And that's published in their regulations, and they've encouraged state agencies and all agencies to use that as a guideline in designing structures. So when we look at Superstorm Sandy storm surge at 6.5 feet, add almost 1.5 feet to that. We're looking at an 8-foot storm surge. So these are the forces that we're dealing with when we evaluate the alternatives. So the alternative that we have put forward as the preferred alternative is the toe protection with rock. Then from the top of the rock to the top of the bluff to stabilize it with erosion control matting and vegetative plantings. And then at the top of the bluff itself to stop the rainwater from coming over the top of the bluff and eroding the face. And you can see in these photos here, for example, and it might be a little bit better, this is page 21. You can see these rills in the face of the bluff, and that's the water that's running over the top of the bluff. It's also the rainwater that's hitting the face of the bluff. So we want to stabilize that face with erosion control matting and vegetation, and also prevent any water that may be coming over the top of the bluff from running down the face and causing that type of erosion. One of the many reasons that this is the preferred approach is that, as you can see, the shoreline is recessed along here as a result of the existing erosion. So the structures to the north and to the south are actually going to be farther seaward than what we're proposing, because we're going to go back to the toe of the bluff. And if you look at this photo on page 7, you can see that this is a similar situation, because in this particular project, there's a hard point on the far end, and you can see these stairs are coming down from another hard point. So this is inset a little bit. And in that situation, it's actually preserved a nice sandy beach there. So,
Excuse me, I'm going to ask, is this you reading from the report that we received on February 25th? Or you said there were 2 reports, one that was several
the
months ago?
26th.
Okay,
Yes.
because our page is only up to page 17, and you're referring to...
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I just want to
Oh,
make
this
sure.
was, I just used this photo from the previous report, I'm sorry.
That's fine. I just can't go that far if it's a different report. So, okay, making sure.
But there is actually, those photos.
But you're good
are-
up to page 17.
Good, the 17. You can find those two photos on page 10 and 12 of my existing, of that February report.
Got it.
They were good photos, so I used them again. So this structure has high probability of survival. It's integrated with vegetative stabilization and stormwater runoff control. That is why it's preferred for this site. So what we did then, and I believe this was partially our idea and partially at the request of the board, was what are your options? That's what you want to do. What are your alternatives? So one of our alternatives, we can repair the gabion. We can come in and we can fix this area here, and there's a little bit damage down here as well, and create a new gabion wall basically in the spot that it is right now. We don't think it's a very good idea for two reasons. The method of construction of a gabion is to fill a wire basket with stone. Well, wire doesn't last as long as stone does. And the location of the gabion is right at, or actually slightly below, the high water line. So you're going to have not just the corrosive aspects of salt water, but as the waves hit the gabion, and this is one of the methods of failure, the stones tend to move because they're small. They're only little cobble-sized stuff. And that chafes against the wire itself. And that's the normal method of failure on these gabions, is when they're exposed to very consistent, and in this case, pretty significant wave activity. They fail through corrosion, and then they fail through mechanical abrasion. And if you look at the photos on page 8, you can see evidence of that. And the result is they don't work. So we don't think that the structure itself is a good structure for this site, and we don't think that its location is a good fit for this site. So one of the other things that we looked at is to undertake a bluff restoration with sand or bluff compatible material with or without vegetation and with or without core logs. Now, we've done many of these projects of bluff restoration and core logs at the toe as protection. On page 9 is an example of a failure on Shinnecock Bay, where we're in similar but actually slightly less energetic conditions. And this was a beautiful project, and it lasted about 6 months. And it's simply because the materials that we're using cannot withstand direct wave attack. This type of a treatment works very effectively when you have a sandy beach, you have very low wave activity. Usually it's in protected embayments. And in those, we've had tremendous success with them. But in an area like this, where we have direct wave attack, which is 3, 4, 6, 8 feet, depending on the wind and the duration, they simply cannot stand up to that activity, and therefore it doesn't accomplish our goal, which is protection of the toe of the bluff. The other alternative that was recommended we examine was the staggered boulder field. So we used as an evaluation the boulder field that currently exists to the south of the site, which is right here. And on page 10, it gives you an aerial view of that boulder field. And as you can see, it's not stopping erosion. The erosion has proceeded landward of it in almost all of the areas, in some areas as much as 20 feet. You can see by the erosional rills on the face and the very steep nature of the bluff, the toe is still being undercut and water is still running down the face of the bluff. We've actually done some work on this site and tried to stabilize it with core logs and vegetation, and it simply won't hold. You can also see that the boulders themselves have become stranded out on the beach and are actually interfering with public access along the beach. And if you look on page 11 of the report, you can see that the examples, the observations of erosion are very obvious throughout this area, and I've identified them in the photo. And then going to page 12, this is just a ground view. This is taken at low tide, where if you're walking along the beach, this is what you encounter as you get there. So from our perspective, the boulder field is not appropriate here because, number one, it doesn't provide protection, and number two, as the bluff continues to erode, whatever is placed is now stranded out on the beach. And that will either impede public access partially or completely, and also presents a bit of a safety hazard for anybody who's walking on the beach. And imagine, a bunch of kids, as soon as they see rocks like this on the beach, the first thing they want to do is jump on them and jump off them. So we don't think that that is suitable for this site. The last one we were asked to examine was the offshore breakwater system. And so we looked at this, and we've actually built a couple of these already. We designed one for Suffolk County. That's at the end of Indian Island, where the tip on Circle Drive was being eroded and native artifacts were being uncovered during storms, which is pretty disturbing. And that's worked very well. But we were able to treat the entire point with a series of structures as opposed to a single structure. And it's within a single, what we call coastal compartment. In other words, when we're dealing with shorelines, we look at the reach of the shoreline. We don't just look at the individual parcel. So these structures are best when you're treating a reach of shoreline, not when you're treating individual properties. And I'm pretty convinced that placing a structure here in isolation would have difficult, if not impossible, to predict impacts, including potential erosion, either updrift or downdrift, depending on how the particular storm strikes a shoreline. So from an application point of view, although this is, we think, a feasible and usable structure in many situations, it doesn't apply to this. So when we're looking at the reach of shoreline again, the object is what's going on here throughout the shoreline, and how do you treat this one so that it's more consistent with the rest of the treatments and better. And that brings us back to our preferred alternative. Now, I'm definitely not going to explain the chart on the table 2 on page 14, but Stevens Institute of Technology in New Jersey has really taken a leadership role in developing how to evaluate shorelines for the application of different living shoreline types. And so what we did was we applied in Appendix A, you'll see our application, that's on page 17, where we go through all of the numbers that we had previously provided to you and laid them into the table. And as a result of that analysis, we came up with the fact that that the conditions, the criterion as extracted from the Stevens tables is that this is a medium to high, mostly high energy environment. And in that environment, revetments and breakwaters are considered appropriate, but gabions, boulder fields, and sand alone don't have the characteristics necessary to withstand the type of high wave energy impact. And as a consequence, although we could do a breakwater if we were doing a big stretch of shoreline. When we're talking about this much smaller stretch, we think that the revetment coupled with the stabilization of the face of the bluff and the stormwater control at the top of the bluff is the preferred alternative. And so our mitigation measures, which I will wrap up with, are basically getting rid of this thing now, which is talk about blocking access. It's blocking access. I think that's a pretty substantial mitigation. Number two, we're moving the structure as far landward as possible, so we'll be back in here, which is, 20 to 30 feet farther back from where we are right now. Stable, and as I've said 3 times already, stabilizing the bluff face and stormwater control. So that is our analysis of alternatives, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
On that gabing that's there now that's in need of repair, was that placed there with the appropriate permits?
There's some discussion over that. I believe the permit that was issued on this is was a trustee's permit, if I'm not mistaken, but Marty might correct me, which is unusual because they don't have jurisdiction in that area. But it was actually placed prior to the creation of the wetlands ordinances.
It was back in the 80s?
And there hasn't been any maintenance as far as the caging that goes around the boulders?
Not to the best of my knowledge. These structures tend to fail slowly, not catastrophically. So I haven't done a forensic on how this failed in what over what period of time, but typically, and you can see that a big substantially most of their gabion is still intact. But once it fails in a small section and the waves and water get behind it, it's just a matter of time.
Because I bring that up from even just 1990 to now, that's 35 years. And when did that section fail?
I cannot give you that answer.
Okay.
I mean, I can, but I
So
just
the
can't do
rest of it
now.
has still lasted 35 years, so
Mhm.
even the salt action on the metal and whatnot, and it's still, I don't know if the rest of it's ready to fail tomorrow.
It's
But it
actually
looks-
not in bad,
but-
all things
So if it's not in
considered.
bad shape, then I would say that the metal has really worked, the metal fencing, chain link has actually worked well enough until now, so I'm wondering why just repeating that and putting it back in place won't last that another 35 years, but.
Well, I just think
who
it
knows
has.
how long the other sides will last, but
Yeah.
if they've lasted 35 years, the middle section being replaced would last 35 years, so.
I think I don't know that it would last that long because conditions are changing and now it's much closer to the water than it was when it was built. But we think that the rock revetment set back is just far better, will have a longer life and less impact.
Have you done rock revetments anywhere close to what you have here, condition-wise?
Condition-wise, yeah. Yeah, this is one of our projects, actually.
And I'm sorry, where is that again, Aaron?
That one's in Sands Point, believe it or not. So it's on Long Island Sound. But we've done, I don't know, a dozen or two rock revetments of different types, on bay shorelines and on, in fact, we just wrapped one up. Oh gosh, I can't remember where it is, but yeah, we've built a number of these.
Okay, I'm getting a little closer to home. Anything in Southampton?
Oh yeah, we just finished a project in Southampton. I can't tell you where it is because I can't remember, but I can get you a list.
Any other questions before Marty speaks?
Good evening, Marty Shea, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. As this board knows, this application has been before this board for a very long time. I've been to the property during that stretch of times at least a dozen times. Nonetheless, I revisited the property this past Monday. At that time, I observed about 40 feet of beach in front of the eroded bluff and about 10 to 20 feet of beach seaward of the historic gabion. This is one of the few spots along this stretch of the Little Peconic Bay and Noack where we have remaining unarmored beach. And, there are other areas, of course, where we have extensive unarmored beaches, such as Tower Point and Cow Neck, but within this region of Noack, as indicated by the applicant, most of the shorefront has been historically bulkheaded or revetting, resulting in the loss of the beach seaward of that structure. As this board knows, what happens with vertical structures is that it results in deflection of wave energy downward, which then scours out and lowers the elevation of the beach immediately seaward, thereby resulting in a loss of sand beach. So, this is a spot where we still have cove and sand beach, and I would offer that it's the charge of the town and charge of this board to do whatever they can to protect remaining unarmored beaches, no matter how small, and to look at whether or not armoring is really necessary.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. So typically we start considering armoring of a beach as an absolute last resort when we're looking at a constrained lot where a home is in danger of being damaged as a result of storm-caused erosion. That is not the case here at all. In fact, the existing home stands about 125 feet landward of this historically placed gabion, and it's positioned about 140 feet away from the southwesterly floodplain. Regarding the geology of this area, as you can see, the home sits very high, and then you have descending wooded slopes. You have a wooded valley or swale, and then the land rises again. So the house is very separated from this unarmored bluff in this area. Some of the reasons, of course, that we look to protect natural beaches is not only to provide for public recreational use, but those beaches are also critical in terms of shorebirds and other wildlife. The dynamics of an area like this is that the erosion of the bluff line is actually a natural process where you would expect to see erosion wherever we still have natural bluff lines, and the interchange between the bluff and the beach is so critical, because when the bluff gets eroded, what it does is it supplies sediment and sand to the beach. That's critical in recovery of the beach. If you look at Little Peconic Bay, an area where you can see that dynamic interchange and where a natural bluff line has been so critical in the recovery of the beach and in providing sand for a littoral drift is Holmes Hill, which is just west of the North Sea harbor inlet. That bluff line, which is natural and high, has been eroding for years, and it's been so critical in terms of maintaining natural beaches along that stretch of the bay that is on Ormond. The Gabion, as was indicated, its construction predates the town wetland law. It's not a structure that the town or this board would likely permit, nor is it likely that the DEC would permit a new Gabion. That being said, notwithstanding some of the erosion and twisting of some of the wire that encloses the rock in this area, you can actually see that the Gabion in this area achieved the goal that the landowner probably had in mind. In that, look at notwithstanding that the landowner has a sloping lawn right to the bluff crest, look how well vegetated the bluff line is and how stable it is. Yes, when you get significant wave action or significant storm events, you will have some water and wave energy crash over a portion of the Gabion. Nevertheless, this section of the bluff is quite stable. As was alluded to by the applicant, notwithstanding the history, if indeed this is a legally installed structure, and I would have to research that further to provide additional information. But if indeed it is a legal structure, it is well within the legal right of the landowner to make any minor repairs to that Gabion without having to get wetland permits from this board. The damage to the wire encased rock is due to a couple things, as was touched upon. It's due to the shifting of the rock. It's also catches a lot of storm debris. So when you have a lot of heavy wave action and that storm debris is coming in, there is that potential for some damage to a Gabion. That being said, as was already spoken to, the Gabion has been there for something like 35 years, and it's holding its own. What the applicant is seeking to do, as was indicated, is to remove this Gabion and construct a sloped revetment further back. The concern with that is that's going to require damage to the vegetated bluff behind it. So notwithstanding that I don't support the use of gabions today, I am not seeing that it makes a lot of sense at this time to remove and replace that gabion. The applicant had spoken to the rock that has been placed along the Ross and Associates homes. That rock, as this board knows, actually was not permitted by this board. The board had permitted some stone placement, but counter to those permits, the landowner had installed a lot more rock, and it didn't install it consistent with the vision that the board had in mind. I would not actually call that a boulder field. Rather, it's a more linear, partially staggered line of boulders along the shoreline. Generally, when we talk about boulder fields along beaches, we're talking about a much larger footprint and scope of rock placement, where you would have boulders out in the water as well, in order to mimic a natural rocky shoreline. The benefit of that is that the wave action and tidal surge interacts a lot sooner with the rock, deflecting the wave energy in many directions, so that its force is less when it eventually reaches the bluff hill. That being said, based upon my observations of this area, I would not even recommend that a boulder field be established in this area, or as a replacement for the gabion, because the boulder field is not necessary. When you install revetments, even when you install sloping revetments, what those revetments do is they interfere with that natural sediment supply from the bluff face, and they interfere with that exchange of sand. What you want to occur, what typically occurs along natural bluff faces, is as the sand erodes and trees fall, it begins to not only contributes sand for the natural recovery of the beach, and contributes sand to literal transport, so that that sand can potentially be deposited elsewhere to restore on the beaches. It also lessens the vertical shear of the bluff, so that the more landward portion of the beach can begin to build up, and so that the erosion is less over time. The fallen trees that come down the bluff can actually be helpful as well, because when they're left at the toe of the bluff, they actually absorb some of the energy of tidal surges and wave action, and they oftentimes aid in the recovery of sand catchment and seed, so that vegetation can begin to grow at the base of the bluff. You'll see that along the few stretches of beach in Shinnecock Bay, where the bluffs are yet unarmored. There's kind of a back and forth that goes on between significant erosion of the bluff line, and then a natural rebuilding of the upper beach and the bluff toe, a stabilization that allows vegetation to come in, so that the natural ecosystem can do what it's designed to be. This is a property, obviously, that's not constrained at all, with the exception of the one small home. property extends all the way back to Noack Road, so that when this property comes in for subdivision someday in the future, there's certainly an opportunity to locate the homes sufficiently far back from the bluff line so that future homes are not going to be threatened by the natural bluff erosion process. I would actually recommend that the landowner do some additional things, even though this section of bluff, seaward of the house, is well vegetated. Whenever you have a large open lawn area like this along a bluff face, as was touched upon by the applicant, when you get rains, or if the lawn is extensively irrigated, not only is there a chance for runoff of that excess water over the edge of the bluff, but all that water seeps down into the soil, and then it gradually travels towards the bluff face. And what it'll oftentimes do is you'll see on bluffs little weep holes where there's like springs of water, and those springs can create little rivulets that can cause some erosion as well. So to lessen, although it's somewhat unlikely that that's going to be significant here because of the heavy cover of vegetation along that bluff line, I would recommend that this landowner establish a vegetated buffer landward of that bluff crest, because that having that vegetation is helpful in absorbing the excess rainwater or water from irrigation and stabilizing those soils. I'm not standing here saying that I think this board should require that landowner establish a buffer at this time, because the landowner is not before the board for permits for any construction. Just speaking with regards to how that land could be better managed. So,
Marty, I have a couple of questions.
yeah, let me just offer a couple more comments, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. So there's no emergency here. This is not a case where a structure is imminently threatened by erosion, where we need to take some kind of action to try and stabilize any advance of erosion as much as possible. I'm just not seeing that it's critical to armor this, to re-armor or to armor this stretch of shoreline at this time. The natural shoreline here provides a lot of benefits, and I just don't think it's necessary, nor do I think it's appropriate to modify that natural bluff and beach by installing a revetment. Thank you. Yes, you had a question.
On the rock revetment, would you look at that as a vertical structure?
No, it's not a vertical structure. What the landowner is proposing, and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is a sloping
So, all right, so it's not.
revetment. No, and if you read his report, he touches upon the concerns with vertical structures.
I just
that
wanted
they
to,
cause that
yeah.
reflection of wave
I just
action.
wanted to get that clarified.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, Aram has gone through, I don't know if he exhausted, but he's gone through a number of practicable alternatives and has more or less turned them down, if I got that correctly. So Your last sentence, I believe, was that you don't want to see anything done here.
That's correct. I don't.
So
see any-
the question I had before you made that statement was, what would you recommend to prevent the erosion?
Well, erosion is a natural process. You don't want to prevent erosion along the bluff line. You want to allow that bluff to naturally erode because the sand that's deposited at the base of the bluff helps in beach recovery. And it adds to that literal transport of sand that's so critical to recovery of beaches elsewhere. I really don't see any need for stabilization of that area. I mean, I'm not asking that the existing gabion be removed, notwithstanding that we would not permit that today. And you can see how well stabilized this area is behind that gabion.
Well, you did state that they would not need a permit to repair that gabion.
That's correct. That's correct. You know, they would only need a permit if we're talking about major reconstruction. But no, it's as long as that structure is legal, it's well within their legal right to
Right now,
repair.
I'm going to go a
structure.
step further. I think I know the answer, but I just want to check it out. Let's go beyond where they have an existing gabion. They would need a permit to do that, to put a new gabion in there?
To
Or
put a
they-
brand new gabion in.
They would need a
Absolutely.
conservation.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me, Marty.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Did a little research. I wasn't watching a baseball game.
I had other ideas there.
East Shore Drive, which is reasonably in the vicinity, we've done revetments at 47, 51, 59, and 57 East Shore Drive. So those are all in the vicinity and other projects, projects that have been permitted and built. And obviously free to take a look at that. To answer Member Rickenback's question, when did it fail? From aerial photos, 2018. So not that long ago. In fact, it survived Sandy, was doing great up until then.
Well, the first time we saw this was in 20, so I figured it had to have been before 2020.
As far as permits go, I didn't see anything on the town GIS, but I can foil the paper files and see what's in there.
I mostly asked that question not to determine the legality of it, although that was the question, but that would date when it was constructed. But I got the answer in the 80s,
Yeah.
which means it's been there a while.
So I guess the general question is, what would be the harm in doing nothing? Or what would be the detriment to the homeowner and their ownership of the land upward of the bluff and whatnot if we did nothing? Or
Well,
you did nothing.
I think that doing nothing has environmental consequences and liability consequences. When you have
Well, you discussed, I mean, as far as the loose rock and
yeah,
people traversing.
right. But also, environmental consequences. We're going to continue to see erosion. You can see it's carved it out pretty well. That's going to accelerate. But I actually wanted to focus on something else. I'll come back to that if it's okay. We're not trying to stop erosion. That's my first statement. We're trying to control it. We're going to have a limited height structure. That structure is going to be overtopped in some storms. And erosion of that bluff is going to occur. It will, and sand will be supplied to the system. That's the entire basis of the state DEC's guidance on 4.5 tons per foot. But the frequent storms that now can reach in here and oversteepen that toe, that will be stopped. But there are going to be storms, whether it's Sandy or something bigger than that. We're going to overtop this structure because it's a limited size. And that sand is going to be released from the bluff at that point. It's just not going to happen frequently. It's gonna happen infrequently.
Would you dare to make a comparison as to the amount of erosion that would take place with the rock revetment and without the rock revetment? The erosion of the bluff.
It'll be substantially less with the rock revetment, simply because the toe.
Would it be enough to replenish the beach is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well, it will I don't know if it'll be quote unquote enough, but it will serve to replenish the beach. But again, one of the reasons I showed you this is, this is your sediment budget. And we're not gonna balance the sediment budget of this shoreline on this property. Number one, it's impossible, cannot be done. You could erode half the property, you still wouldn't supply enough sediment. Number two, it's not reasonable. The property has a right to reasonably protect their property while preserving environmental values. What we present to the board today is an opportunity to not have this. Because we'll get a building permit, go back and build that. I'm sure that the applicant, I'm not sure, but I think the applicant might do that. But really, if you're talking about conservation of resources, what we're proposing is far superior from every angle. And so, I mean, that's why we're here. Yeah, we can go get a building permit, but we just don't. The applicant, me, and the other professionals, you've had a number of reports delivered to this board that are in the file. None of them feel that is the best solution. So in response to Marty's comment about the bluffs need to release sand, yeah, we know that. This whole shoreline is based on bluff erosion. That's why there's no beach. But if there's going to be a beach, this is the one location where there's going to be a beach, because whatever we do is going to be set back from the shoreline, and the bluff is going to be eroded by some storm at some point. As far as a subdivision in the future, I can't go that far out. This property's been in this family for, I don't know, a really, really long time.
Yeah, that's a stretch. Yeah. I mean, I know Pat personally. That's the only reason I say that.
I've actually never met my client.
Yes, I can believe that. She likes Florida.
But I've been driving by the Prue sign since I was able to drive. And for at least a decade, I thought it said Peru.
Yes. Common mistake.
Yeah. And as far as a buffer zone, I think that's something worth considering. And certainly we want to, we want to control any runoff coming over the top, and we'd certainly look at planting a buffer zone of some type there too. But a healthy lawn, it actually soaks up a ton of water. I think that we've presented a really compelling case. I think that the environmental benefits are far superior to any alternative, and I would urge the board to approve it.
One other question. We're limiting the rock revetment, or you're planning to limit the rock revetment just in front of the house where the gabion is?
No, we go the entire shoreline.
The whole property line?
Mm-hmm. And, just one of the things here is this is a design issue, which I haven't discussed fully with my client. But, what we want to do is try not to prevent a headland, which is what this is acting as right now. So we would try to make this, whatever line the revetment comes in, as consistent as possible. We don't want something sticking out.
What did you call that, a headland?
A headland, yeah.
Listening to your presentation, also listen to Marty's, looked at your report, visit the property, and, we've had discussions on this for actually 4 years. And everybody has their own theory. And yet we've got to determine what's the most logical and makes the most sense, is most consistent with Chapter 325. And that's not an easy thing to do. This board has a very long history of not approving hardened structures on the beach. That's looming very big in my mind on this property, as with others. So when I see your presentation, I look at the alternatives to see if there's something else that might be acceptable. And look back to the history of this and look at 35, 40 years of Gabion structure there that has, I think, really done a remarkable job. There's some failure there for the past 7 years or so. But if we can look beyond that, there's a lot of vegetation on that bluff. There's very little erosion where the Gabion has been not compromised. So that,
Yeah, I'm sorry. You have to have a quorum to continue.
You can't go.
We can take a break.
Let's take a break.
We're not voting on anything.
No, but
No,
still
we can't have a
testimony.
discussion at
so-
all unless we have a
Still
quorum.
testimony. We'll wait till you're back.
Yeah, no, we
you know,
Take a break.
the alternative is worse.
one or the other.
We'll take a recess for a few moments.
The restroom, you open across the hall and you'll have to go outside, so.
Oh, that's good.
Well, while we have a moment, I'll bring you up to date on the Sagaponic Bridgehampton Beach Restoration Project. After some fits and starts due to inclement weather, we've been going like gangbusters. We've got about 134 to 150,000 cubic yards of sand down this week, out of a total projected of 1.2 million. They started at more or less in the vicinity of Peters Pond Road, and they made Town Line Road tonight. And so now they're switching around and headed west. With March 31 is
It's
our.
pretty fast.
This dredge can do 50,000 cubic yards a day, and they work 24/7. I encourage you to go down and take a look. It's pretty impressive, and also go to the town website, and there's a link that takes you to the weekly reports, and you can see the progress from the comfort of your chair.
They thrown up any fish on shore.
No, but there's plenty of seagulls. They're chewing on something, but I don't think they're fish.
I haven't walked the whole length this year and getting more sand dollars like the last time they did some dredging.
There's always a treasure to be found when they're doing a dredging job.
Yeah. I went from beach to beach to see what I could take. Could see.
All right, we're back at full strength.
Thank you, Chairman.
So another part of what goes through my mind is my own history. My grandfather built a house on bluffs that were actually on Long Island Sound in the Riverhead area. Those bluffs are taller than these. Same dynamic happens. And it was about 1960 when my grandfather and the others in my family, before I was of that kind of decision-making caliber, were fearful that they would lose the house because the bluff eroded. There were a couple of big storms. And the same dynamic happens, take away the toe, collapse, gravity, and then it is, too steep, and then it gets less steep. So they moved the house back. I don't know how far, doesn't matter, expecting that I have to get done again. And that was 1960. Now, nothing's been eroded since then. Now, the point of that story is simply this. It is so hard to predict, and the erosion is not linear. And we don't know what's coming down the pike next week or next year or the next 10 years. And it could be nothing will happen. It could be who knows what. So we've got a wide range of possibilities of things that could happen. And of course, it's really easy for us sitting behind the desk here without a financial stake in the project to be more calm and relaxed about it because it's not our loss. But I can see the erosion is real. And you talked about losing a foot a year. I don't know how that is measured. If it is a foot a year, it hasn't been very many years because there's still a lot of property there and it's well vegetated. Where the bluff is well vegetated, that's not losing a foot a year. That looks good. So my thinking on this is let's not get too crazy in what we're doing here because they're unknowns. And when we start getting crazy and build something, tear out this and put in something else and tear out some of the bluff, although it may be in your business a more stable structure, and I wouldn't argue that it isn't, it may have other consequences that we're not evaluating here. And the next thing is we'll have everybody else with properties coming down here to put another rock revetment in, which may or may not be appropriate. I'm leaning towards Marty's recommendation of fix what's there and wait. If in 5, 10, 20 years, more information is discovered and something else needs to be done, well, we can address it then. I wouldn't be surprised if a repaired gabion would last decades again, if done properly.
That was my point when I asked about the fencing around the rocks. Could I just ask real quick?
But let me just say
I'm sorry.
one more thing. But coupled with that, because once again there are a lot of unknowns. But if you do something up on top, that's more better. How much better? Who can evaluate that? Who can put numbers on that? I don't know. And if somebody did, I don't know whether they'd be credible or not. But it certainly moves in the right direction. There's another dynamic too that may have a play here, and that is some kind of growth, some kind of vegetation around the toe, particularly where there's erosion beyond, where there's no gabion. I don't know what that would be, but I know around our farm there's some Phragmites. It has some incredible growth and incredible root mass, but that's well established. It may be something appropriate there. There may be something else that, you know a lot about that anyway. But my thinking is fix the gabion, do something up on top, put some plantings there where it needs a little more encouragement to not erode quite so fast, and see if that is sufficient. So I'm just giving
Well,
you-
I'm listening, and I obviously will relay those comments to Mike and get a reaction.
My last question was, if you've already said this, I apologize. Where there is erosion to the right of the gabion, that looks relatively steep, but you're saying that the revetment you're looking to put in is not as steep as that. So would you have to do some fill and put it in front, or fill it with rock until it meets that angle, or are you putting it right up against the bluff that's there that's partially eroded, which would be relatively steep And you wouldn't be digging into the bluff to do that, you'd just be surface laying it?
Right, yeah, we'd have to do, some slope adjustment so that we get the proper, that we can match the slope of the rock
Because
revetment.
the slope, yeah, the slope you want, if the
Yeah.
bluff is like this and you want, like, you have to either fill it or
Yeah.
whatever, so it means it's gonna be out farther.
4.5 tons of rock sounds like a lot of rock. It's not.
No, you use it up before you know it,
Yeah,
okay.
you
I
know,
was just curious of the
Yeah.
angles, it's not where I'm going, I'm just trying to picture in my mind what that section would look like, even though I do agree with Harry with the part to the left that I think repairing the gabion that's there would make more sense in that area, but I see there's erosion to the right, and I'm trying to wrap my head around what could go there instead, if anything at all, so.
well,
I'm just not a fan of hard structures either, but repairing that one section, I don't really have a real issue with.
one of the other issues that the applicant has to grapple with is that there are multiple agencies involved.
Mhm.
So, I can inquire, but I don't know that the DEC is gonna grant us a permit to repair that.
Well,
I can find out. I haven't asked the question, so I don't know the answer.
And they're different than us, you would need a permit to repair?
Yes.
I agree with you, Harry, but one thing, I don't like the idea of the Phragmites. They're invasive, they do have very deep roots, which is why it's so hard to eradicate them, but they take over, you might lose your beach eventually because of them, and they're not really good for any of the native insects or plants. And then on the top, if you're putting a buffer, there are plants that are used just to absorb water, which are used in areas where you want to prevent, water flowing in one direction or seeping. So I just add that.
Yeah, as I appreciate all comments, listening, and will faithfully relay them. As far as vegetation goes, we've done, 100 bluffs in the last 40 years. And vegetation is great. We use it as much as we can. It just cannot stand up to wave attack. And so it'll be gone in the first minor storm. It's simply that, that's the fact. If it worked, I'd be doing it. I would have done it already. I don't actually need a permit to plant.
But just remember, the house is not in any danger of falling because of any
No,
erosion now or in the near future that could possibly eat up that much land. So, that's sort of keeping us hesitant about doing anything.
I hear what you're saying, but
you
from my perspective, missing a great opportunity to move everything back and be able to, wouldn't it be lovely if there was actually a beach here instead of rocks? I think we can accomplish that. And I've been doing this more than a week.
Okay. Well, we'll have to debate this again.
Where do we want to go from here?
You have made comments that I need to relay to my client. Give me another date to come back after I confirm.
And your time frame would be
You want it in
weeks,
225?
months?
Yeah, so I can.
Well, weeks, months. I don't know what your timetable has been up until now because we've been making adjournments and however long you've been involved and communicating with your client is going
You're
to
gonna
dictate
hold
when
on to
your
that?
next time will be. But if it's a month, if it's 2 months, our
30
calendar
days
goes
is-
to May and there's nobody on May.
A month is fine. I don't think we have a
So,
lot to review.
April 9th.
We have, let's do April
Second.
9th. We have two on March 26th. They may be long.
And we just added a second one to the 23rd, I believe, didn't we? Or was that the first one?
We did just, that's the one we added.
That's the one we added, okay. So either the 9th or the 23rd, there's one on each.
May have you want to hold on to your pamphlet?
Yeah,
I'm going to hold on to mine.
Okay,
So,
you want to hold on to
I
it?
want to read more on this.
Do you want us to correspond any action on it? Okay. We can,
So,
The April 9th or 23rd.
I want to thank the board and staff for their attention tonight, and hope everybody
Do we get a
So
date?
do you April 9th or April 23rd?
9th. I already wrote it down.
Okay.
Is there anyone on Zoom who wants to speak in this application?
No one on Zoom.
Is there a motion to adjourn to April 9th?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks again. Be well.
You too, thanks.
Advisory reports, Board of Trustees, Eileen Segro.
Good evening, Gary Mauricio, Chief Environmental Analyst for the town. This is a referral for an application that's been received by the trustees in order to install a rock revetment on the Shinnecock Bay. There are several recommended comments. The first is that a February 25, that should be 2025, Environment Division Field Assessment has confirmed that, consistent with, and I referenced the drawings that got filed with the trustees, as prepared by Enviro Permits dated December 7, 2024, as well as a subsequent review of town records and aerial imagery. A large elevated deck was constructed within a required 75-foot wide wetland non-disturbance non-fertilization buffer between 2016 and 2017 without requisite town wetland and building permits. Second, such buffer, which was established by covenant, recorded with the Suffolk County Clerk on September 24, 2007 under LIBOR D00012523, page 420, prohibited the building of the structures with the exception of replacement of a much smaller pre-existing deck at the top of a former beach access stairway, provided that any necessary permits and approvals from the town of Southampton were obtained. As such, the deck needs to be removed or legalized and or otherwise addressed by filing of a Conservation Board wetland permit application. Thirdly, the added intent of such covenant was that the 75 feet wide zone atop the bluff be left undisturbed to naturally revegetate rather than be mowed or maintained as lawn or landscape, with the condition that any conservation management or restoration plan, inclusive of compatible plantings, shrubs, and trees, be first approved by the chief environmental analyst. As a large portion of the buffer is currently being maintained as lawn, the property is not in compliance with such covenant. For, in light of the above, the applicant's plans therefore need to be modified to call for restoration of the disturbed portions of the buffer beyond the scope of any activities permitted by the Board of Trustees, as well as call for deck removal unless the required Conservation Board wetland permit can be obtained. 5, cognizant of the significant cumulative negative effects that continued permitting of shore armoring is having on the Shinnecock Bay ecosystem and its beaches and wetlands, the applicant needs to demonstrate that there are no practicable alternatives, such as regrading of the Scoured Bluff / embankment and creation of a more naturalized cobble berm, together with sand and native vegetation replenishment that would have less environmental impact than the proposed revetment.
Motion to send those comments to the Board of Trustees of the freeholders and commonality of the town of Southampton.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? For the ZBA, Michael W. Sonnenfeld.
This, as the board knows, is a variance application that pertains to a residentially developed property that recently received an approval from this board in order to go forward with residential improvements, as well as to install parallel lines of fence along the front yards in the required front yards. This matter was before the board at our last meeting. The board had asked that I amend the prior advisory report. This revised report, I believe, is consistent with the recommendations and comments made by the board at the meeting on February 12th. So the amended covenants are as follows. First indicates that a February 5, 2025 Environment Division field assessment has revealed that the unauthorized front yard roadside parallel fence lines, inclusive of the illegal deer fence, are yet standing and have neither been removed nor reduced in height, despite repeated notices of violation provided to the applicant dating back to 2016. Second, the Conservation Board permitted the proposed parallel deer exclusion fences, inclusive of both 4 feet high and 6 feet high fences, roadside, as the board is interested in evaluating fence options which would both protect residential property from deer damage yet minimize injury and mortality to wildlife. Thirdly, the intent was to have the landowner install the fence lines and commence a pilot fence/wildlife injury/mortality risk study upon securing the necessary variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 6-foot high fence within the required front yards. And lastly, the Conservation Board has no significant concerns regarding the rear yard setback and pyramid variances, which are also being sought for the planned residential building activities, as such improvements have already been authorized by wetland permit CB 23056 and modified wetland permit CB 23056.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board of appeals.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Stephen Genovese.
This application relates to a residentially developed property at 2 Lane in the hamlet of Hampton Bays. There are 2 recommended comments. The first is that the subject property for which relief is being sought fronts on the Great Peconic Bay and contains town and state regulated tidal wetlands. However, the town's wetland permitting jurisdiction is limited to 50 feet landward of the bulkhead. Second, the planned construction activities depicted on the survey as prepared by Joseph Secafico, dated August 7, 2019, with a latest revision date of October 31, 2024, which are the subject of the pending application, are generally consistent with the Genovese resident plot plan prepared by Arnold Montag, dated May 17, 2024, with a latest revision date of August 1st, 2024, which received a letter of non-jurisdiction on October 1st, 2024. Consequently, the intended residential improvements are unlikely to result in any significant adverse wetland or environmental impacts.
Motion to send those comments to the zoning board of appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Susan, Bomel, Cornicello, and Anthony Cornicello.
This application relates to a residentially zoned property at Cormoran Drive in the Hamlet of Hampton Maze. There are two recommended comments. This is a property that is already developed, as you mentioned. First is that the subject property for which relief is being sought fronts on Shinnecock Bay and contains town and state regulated tidal wetlands. However, the town's wetland permitting jurisdiction is limited to 50 feet landward of the bulkhead. And second, the proposed construction activities as depicted on the survey prepared by Brian A. Trucker with the latest revision date of September 12, 2024, which are currently the subject of the pending application, are generally consistent with the survey as prepared by Mr. Trucker, last dated December 18, 2023, which had received a letter of non-jurisdiction on February 15, 2024. Consequently, the intended residential improvements are unlikely to result in any significant adverse wetland or environmental impacts.
Motion to send those comments to zoning board of appeals.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Administrative wetland permits are in your packets. Resolution of conditional approval, A02400231 Marlin LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to 31 Marlin LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024041 JL Southampton LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval granted to JL Southampton LLC for the proposed project upon the terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024044 Bradley A. Edgar and Lauren D. Edgar, and the applicant wishes to adjourn this to the next meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A024045 Merrick Properties LLC. Any discussion?
Move to issue.
Second.
Resolved that a conditional wetland permit approval is granted to Merrick Properties LLC for the proposed project on terms and conditions set forth herein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Preliminary review six determination A024047 Jason Lash and Robin Siegel.
This application relates to a recently redeveloped waterfront property in the hamlet of Noyak. The property is located along Hampton Road, and there is a preliminary advisory report as part of the record dated February 19, 2024. As indicated by the advisory report, this property has some history in that this board had issued a wetland permit for demolition of a prior home and detached garage and construction of a new FEMA compliant house with periphery deck and an upgraded sanitary system, impervious driveway. That permit was conditioned upon establishment of a covenanted, naturally vegetated buffer, which has been restored and is intact. The permit that the board had issued had expired and cannot be renewed because the expiration date is over 3 years ago. So the application was made to seek reapproval of the formally authorized redevelopment properties. When I visited the premises, I found that some minor modifications were made to the deck, to the driveway, outdoor shower, and elevated AC units. So those activities would need to be legalized as well. There is no aspect of that work that would result in significant adverse impacts. Those additional improvements are within the confines of the residential footprint that had been approved by this board. So the landowner is seeking to get this permit so that he can file a certificate of wetland compliance application to close out the wetland permit and then file for a certificate of occupancy with the building division. There is sufficient information to make a determination on this application. As such, recommending that the public hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing?
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024063, Stephen and Valerie Ubertini.
This is a relatively large piece of waterfront property that has expansive sand beaches along the Little Peconic Bay, as well as pretty extensive marshlands along Davis Creek, and vegetated coastal habitat. It also benefits from an osprey nest location, which is active each year. So the property has a periphery deck. The landowner is seeking to expand the extent of that deck in a manner that the new structural work would yet be landward of the existing covenanted buffers. The applicant has offered to use untreated wood for the purposes of deck construction. When this application came before me, I noted that there was, the landowner was having a significant issue with vehicle trespass. There's been a long history of people driving across this landowner's property in order to gain access to the beach. So I recommended that he install a post and a rail fence along the southwest side of the property and along the end of West Beach Road, which he's agreed to do, and he also has received DEC approval for. Right now, he's parking a large boat and scattering all kinds of debris across the area where vehicles are driving, with the hopes that no one will rip up the sandy dunes and drive around his house. So the applicant has come back in the last couple of days with a revised survey showing that post and rail fence. I have also asked that during construction, that if we have an active osprey nest again, that construction activities be monitored to make sure they don't unduly disturb or harass nesting. Osprey nest is only about 44 feet from the deck, and the applicant has agreed to do that. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive the public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 325, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? A 024069, 151/152 CSP LLC.
This is a redevelopment plan for a property in the private community of Cold Spring Point, where there is currently a modest-sized cottage or home that's been there for many years. The property has expansive beach on the Great Peconic Bay. There is a preliminary advisory report filed dated February 18, 2025. consistent with my recommendations. The applicant has elected to establish a covenanted wetland preservation area and wetland non-disturbance, non-fertilization buffer that would cover the entirety of the beach and the natural vegetation within the most landward portions of the beach in order to adhere to the required wetland construction setbacks. The new home would actually be situated a little bit further landward than the existing home, and it also would be landward of other recently permitted new homes along this stretch. The buffer would be perfectly aligned with the covenanted buffers on the adjacent properties as well. This is an application for which we have sufficient information to make a determination. As such, recommending that the hearing requirement be waived.
Motion to waive public hearing.
Second.
Resolved that the Town Conservation Board hereby waives the public hearing requirement pursuant to Chapter 225, Section 325-80 of the Town Code. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution issue modification, CB 23033, Thomas DeVito and Eva DeVito.
This application relates to a property at Shore Road in the hamlet of North Sea. Several years ago, this board had issued a permit to redevelop the property, which was conditioned upon establishment of a naturally vegetated covenanted wetland service non-fertilization buffer. The applicant is looking to make some minor changes around the immediate periphery of the residence that include various walks, small patio area, access stairs, relocation of AC units, and relocation of a formerly permitted shed. None of these activities are likely to result in any new or significant adverse impacts. So this resolution to approve the requested modified wetland permit so that the landowner can complete these additional improvements and file for a certificate of wetland compliance in order to close out the permit.
Motion issued modification.
Second.
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Thomas DeVito and Eva DeVito for the proposed project on the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? CB 24060, Flanders Realty Corp.
This is a property that's been before this board before, 100 Lane in the hamlet of Flanders. Recently, this board had issued a permit to legalize a minor sunroom and a porch expansion, also authorized restoration of disturbed portions of a conservation easement, as well as to establish an expansive, naturally vegetated buffer. More recently, we had authorized a fenced-in beehive area and some minor widening of an existing driveway. This application got filed because the applicant had installed drive entry piers with the idea of putting in a drive gate, was not aware of the need to obtain wetland permits and building permits. There are no issues with the piers or the planned drive gate at all. It's not going to result in any impacts to the on-site wetlands. So this resolution to approve the needed modified wetland permit so they can install the desired drive entry gates.
Motion to issue the modification.
Second?
Resolved that a wetlands permit modification be issued to Flanders Realty for the proposed project by the terms and conditions set forth therein. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all.